Bismillah walhamdulillah wasalat wasalam ala rasulullah, peace and blessings be upon him, my beloved brothers and sisters. When a person feels that they are left alone in this world, when they look around and see nobody standing by their side, the heart can become heavy. Especially for a woman who feels she has no friends, that heaviness can easily turn into sadness, sometimes even despair. But it is in those moments that Islam shifts the perspective entirely. Because the truth is, the very first and the most constant friend, companion, and guardian you have is Allah Almighty Himself. And if that relationship is strong, then the absence of people does not break you. Rather, it can become the very reason you rise above the weakness of depending on people. We live in a time where people measure their value by how many connections they have, how many contacts in their phone, how many likes on social media, how many people they can call friend. But the Quran teaches us something completely different. It reminds us, indeed, Allah is with those who fear Him and those who do good. 16:128. Notice how the verse does not say Allah is only with those who have supportive families or circles of friends. It says He is with those who have taqwa and ihsan, God, consciousness and goodness. That means even if the world turns its back on you, as long as you are mindful of Allah and striving to do good, you are never alone. Psychologically, when a person attaches their sense of worth to people, they will always experience disappointment. Friends can walk away, people can change, hearts can shift, and sometimes you may not even know why. But when your attachment is rooted in Allah, your self-worth becomes stable. Why? Because Allah never abandons His servant. He never changes His loyalty. He never tires of listening to your concerns. In fact, He says in the Quran, "Call upon me, I will respond to you." 40:60. That means your deepest companionship is not in a human ear that listens for a few minutes and then moves on. It is in turning to Allah, who listens endlessly, who responds perfectly, who knows you better than you know yourself. Think about this. When you wake up in the middle of the night and your heart feels restless, you may have no one to message, no one to call. But you have the one who waits for you to raise your hands to Him. The Prophet told us that in the last third of the night, Allah descends to the lowest heaven and calls out, "Who is there asking me so I may give him? Who is there seeking my forgiveness so I may forgive him?" That is not just theology, that is deep psychological healing. Because it means the emptiness you feel in human companionship is meant to be filled by divine companionship. Philosophically, this brings us to a deeper truth. Loneliness is never really about the absence of people, but about the absence of connection. And the purest form of connection is the one that transcends time, space, and circumstance, the connection to the Creator Himself. A woman who nurtures that connection is never truly friendless, even if she appears so to the world. Because the greatest friend, the most reliable ally, the most constant companion, is already by her side. So if you feel you have no friends, let that realization drive you back to Allah. Build your salah with consistency. Make your dua more heartfelt. Engage in dhikr until your tongue and heart become attached to the remembrance of your Lord. Because when you strengthen that bond, you will find a type of peace that no human friendship can replace. And with that peace, you will discover that even solitude can be sweet, because solitude with Allah is never truly solitude. Remember this, losing people does not make you empty if you have found Allah. And finding Allah makes every loss bearable, every loneliness purposeful, and every silence filled with meaning. If Allah is with you, then who can truly leave you? When we think about loneliness, one of the first whispers that comes to the heart is, "Why me? Why am I the one left out? Why don't I have a circle? Why does it feel like nobody stands with me?" That thought itself can become painful because we start believing that being lonely is a sign of weakness or failure. But in reality, even the most beloved human being to ever walk the earth, Muhammad, went through moments of deep loneliness, and if he went through it, then our own experience of being left out is not a punishment. It can actually be part of a spiritual journey. When the Prophet first received revelation, he stood virtually alone. The people he grew up with, the society that respected him as Alaman, the trustworthy, these suddenly turned on him. Friends distanced themselves, tribes opposed him, family members mocked him. Imagine the weight of carrying the truth of Islam, knowing it will save humanity, but facing rejection from those closest to you. That is loneliness at the highest level. Yet in those moments, the Prophet never collapsed into despair. Instead, he leaned entirely on Allah. His famous retreat in the cave of Hira was not just a physical seclusion, it was symbolic of where real strength comes from: silence with the Creator, connection with the Divine. Think of it this way: the loneliness of the Prophet was not a void, it was a space filled by Allah's companionship. That is why the Quran reminds him gently, "Did he not find you an orphan and give you shelter?" 93:6. Even when people abandoned him, Allah reminded him, "I was always with you. I sheltered you, I guided you, I raised you." This is a powerful lesson for anyone who feels left behind. The feeling of abandonment by people can actually become the doorway to experiencing the closeness of Allah in ways you might never have tasted otherwise. Psychologically, this also reframes how we view isolation. Instead of seeing it as rejection, we can begin to see it as a training ground. The Prophet's loneliness built resilience. It taught him patience, it gave him strength, it polished his heart to a point where he could carry the weight of revelation. In the same way, when a woman today feels like she has no friends, that stage of life can become a place where her faith is trained, her self-understanding deepens, and her bond with Allah becomes unshakable. Sometimes, Allah isolates you before he elevates you. Philosophically, there is also another layer. Human beings often seek validation in numbers. We feel secure when many people are with us, when many voices support us. But truth has never been about numbers. Think about it. The Prophet preached for 950 years and only a small handful followed him. Does that mean he was a failure? Absolutely not. His success was in fulfilling his duty to Allah, not in collecting crowds. Likewise, the Prophet Muhammad started almost alone, but his truth was never defined by how many people stood by him in the beginning. It was defined by his sincerity and his unwavering connection with Allah. For you, this means that being alone is not evidence that you are less valuable. On the contrary, it could mean that Allah is preparing you to stand independently, to live by your values, and to define yourself not by social circles, but by divine purpose. That is why the Prophet could smile even when rejected. His heart was anchored in Allah, not in people's acceptance. So the next time loneliness creeps into your heart, remind yourself, this is not a sign that you are forgotten. Rather, it might be Allah giving you the chance to experience the same training that he gave his messenger, a training in resilience, in patience, and in realizing that no one, no friend, no companion, no human being can fill the place in your heart that only Allah can. If the most beloved of Allah, Muhammad, endured loneliness and found strength in it, then your own loneliness may not be a weakness at all, it may be your path to greatness. One of the greatest struggles of modern life is that people measure their worth by how others see them. A woman might ask herself, do I have friends? Do people invite me out? Do they check in on me? And if the answer is no, she begins to feel as though she has failed in life, but Islam shifts the entire framework. Your value is not determined by the size of your social circle, or how much people praise you, or how popular you are. In Islam, your worth is measured by something far deeper, your taqwa, your God, consciousness, and the sincerity of your heart. Allah makes this crystal clear in the Quran. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. 49:13. Notice how Allah does not say the noblest are the most beautiful, the most wealthy, or the most socially connected. He does not say the noblest are those who are surrounded by friends. He says the noblest are those who live with taqwa. This is revolutionary because it frees us from a life of constant comparison. You do not need people to validate you if you already know Allah validates you through your sincerity, your good deeds, and your effort. From a psychological perspective, this is incredibly empowering. Many people struggle with feelings of inadequacy because they define themselves through other people's eyes. If you are constantly seeking validation from friends, you will always remain insecure because human approval is temporary. One day you may be liked, the next day forgotten, but when your validation comes from Allah, it is eternal. He knows your silent struggles, he counts every tear you shed in private, and he values deeds that no human being even sees. That means your worth is rooted in something no one can take away. Philosophically, this also highlights a deeper truth about existence. Human beings are wired to search for meaning, to search for belonging. But the danger comes when we try to fill that need entirely with human company. Friends are a blessing, yes, but they cannot define who you are. True dignity, true identity, comes from realizing that you are a servant of Allah. And a servant of Allah is never small, even if the world ignores her, because being connected to the infinite makes you infinite in purpose. Think about how the Prophet built his community. He did not begin with thousands of followers. He began with a handful of sincere people, most of whom were looked down upon by society. Yet their taqwa made them giants in history. Bilal ibn Rabah was a slave, and yet today we honor him as one of the greatest companions. Why? Not because of status, not because of wealth, not because of popularity, but because of his faith and his resilience. His self-worth was anchored in Allah, not in people. And this is the shift every woman must make if she feels friendless. Instead of thinking, I am less because I have no friends, ask yourself, who am I in the sight of Allah? What does my record of deeds say about me? How much taqwa and sincerity do I carry? Because if that part is strong, then even if the world does not know your name, you are honored by the angels, remembered by Allah, and counted among his beloved servants. So do not let society convince you that your worth is measured by human recognition. The truest measure of your worth is how close you are to Allah and how sincerely you strive for him. Friends may come and go, but Allah never leaves you, and his opinion of you outweighs the opinions of the entire world combined. Your value is not in who surrounds you, but in who sustains you, and that is Allah. Sometimes in life, you will notice that people quietly step away from you. A friend stops calling. A group you once felt part of no longer includes you. At first, it feels like rejection. It hurts deeply because the human heart is naturally drawn to connection. But what if that distance is not a loss, but a form of divine protection? What if Allah, in his mercy, removes certain people from your life, not to punish you, but to save you from harm you cannot yet see? In the Quran, Allah reminds us, perhaps you dislike something which is good for you, and perhaps you love something which is bad for you, but Allah knows and you do not know. 2:216. This verse is not just about big decisions like marriage or career, it applies to friendships too. Sometimes the people we are attached to may actually be pulling us away from our higher purpose. We may not realize it because companionship can blind us to flaws, but Allah sees what we cannot. So when someone exits your life, it may well be Allah's way of purifying your path. The Prophet gave us a clear analogy when he said, the example of a good companion and a bad companion is like that of the seller of musk and the blacksmith's bellows. Bukhari and Muslim, a good companion elevates you, inspires you, and leaves you better than before. A bad companion may not always harm you directly, but like a blacksmith's fire, being too close leaves stains on your clothes, ashes in your hair, and smoke in your lungs. Now think about it. If Allah sees that you are sitting too close to that fire, would he not, out of his mercy, pull you away? Psychologically, this changes how we interpret separation. Instead of telling yourself, everyone leaves me, I must be unworthy, try telling yourself, maybe Allah is saving me from an influence I do not need. That perspective alone can turn heartbreak into healing. It gives meaning to the loss, and meaning is the most powerful antidote to despair. Because when you realize that Allah is actively managing your relationships, you no longer see people's absence as random, you see it as divine arrangement. Philosophically, this points to something deeper about the human condition. We often chase comfort, even in relationships that do not truly nourish us. Why? Because familiarity feels safe, even if it is not healthy. But growth often requires separation. Just as a plant cannot grow if it is strangled by weeds, a believer cannot thrive if surrounded by toxic company. So when Allah removes those weeds from your life, it may feel like an empty garden at first, but He is making space for new flowers to grow. And here is the beautiful irony. Sometimes Allah distances you from harmful company, not only to protect you, but also to prepare you for righteous companionship. You may be alone for a while, but that solitude is like fertile soil. It gives you the chance to work on yourself, to grow in faith, to become someone who will later attract friendships that are pure, supportive, and God-centered. It is almost as if Allah is saying, first, I want you to heal. Then, I will send you the people who deserve to walk with you. So the next time someone leaves your life, resist the urge to chase them desperately. Ask yourself, what lesson is Allah teaching me here? What protection may He be granting me? Because very often, what feels like rejection is actually redirection. And every redirection from Allah is always towards something better, towards growth, towards purity, towards closeness to Him. When Allah removes someone from your life, trust that He saw what you could not, and He is guiding you to what you truly need. It is important to remember that Islam does not deny our need for companionship. We are social beings created to live in connection with others. The Prophet himself had friends, companions, and loved ones around him. But here is the key. He taught us that the value of companionship lies not in numbers, but in quality. One righteous friend who reminds you of Allah is worth more than 1,000 companions who distract you from Him. In the Quran, Allah paints a picture of true friendship when He says, close friends that day will be enemies to each other, except for the righteous. 43:67. This verse is profound. It means that many of the friendships people spend their lives building will actually turn against them on the day of judgment. Why? Because they were built on the wrong foundation, on fun without responsibility, on worldly goals without remembrance of Allah, on attachment without values. But righteous friendships, those built on sincerity and taqwa, will survive the test of eternity. They are friendships that follow you beyond the grave. Psychologically, this should shift how we view our loneliness. If you are someone who feels you have no friends, it does not mean you are broken. It may simply mean that Allah wants you to be selective, to wait for the kind of companionship that uplifts your soul instead of draining it. Many people fill their lives with shallow connections just to avoid feeling lonely. But shallow connections often lead to deeper emptiness. Why? Because the heart craves authenticity, not noise. It craves people who remind you of your higher purpose. Without that, even a crowd can feel lonely. This is why the Prophet compared a good companion to the seller of musk. If you sit with him, you either leave with perfume, or at the very least, you leave smelling better than when you arrived. A bad companion, on the other hand, is like sitting with a blacksmith. You either get burned or at least leave with the stench of smoke. Notice the subtle wisdom here. You do not have to do anything wrong yourself. Simply being in the wrong company leaves its mark on you, and conversely, being in the company of the righteous uplifts you even without you realizing it. Philosophically, this brings us to a deeper reflection on influence. Human beings are shaped by the environments they dwell in. The people around you are not neutral. They are either pulling you closer to Allah or pulling you further away. There is no middle ground. So if you feel alone right now, take that as an opportunity to protect your heart until you find the right people. Loneliness for a while is far better than false companionship that poisons your soul. Think of the Prophet again. In the early days of Islam, he did not have a crowd, but he had a handful of companions whose faith was pure: Abu Bakr, Khadijah, Ali, Zayd. Each of them played a monumental role in his mission, not because they were many, but because they were sincere. This shows us that the strength of your circle lies not in size but in truth. A single loyal friend who prays for you in your absence is a treasure more valuable than hundreds of people who know your name but do not care for your soul. So if you are searching for friends, shift the goal. Do not ask, how many friends do I have? Instead, ask, do I have even one friend who brings me closer to Allah? And if you do not, then turn to Allah first and ask Him to grant you righteous companionship. Because He is the one who places love between hearts. Better to walk alone on the straight path than to walk with a crowd that leads you astray. And when Allah finally grants you righteous company, you will realize that one true friend is worth more than the whole world. When a person finds themselves in solitude, with no friends to lean on, the heart can easily slip into despair. But in Islam, solitude is not meaningless. It is not a punishment, nor is it proof that you are unloved. It can be one of the greatest opportunities Allah gives you, a chance to turn your loneliness into growth, into strength, and into service. Think about it for a moment. Some of the greatest transformations in history happened in moments of solitude. The Prophet received revelation while in the cave of Hira, completely alone. Musa spoke to Allah on Mount Sinai in seclusion. Maryam withdrew from her people when she was chosen for a miraculous role. Isolation in these cases was not a void, it was preparation. It was space created by Allah for reflection, for clarity, and for closeness to Him. This teaches us that your own moments of solitude are not wasted. They can be a gift if you use them well. Psychologically, loneliness hurts because human beings are wired for connection. But here's the truth. If you are deprived of human connection for a period of time, you are being invited to strengthen a higher connection. When you no longer have people to talk to, you are pushed to talk to Allah more. When you no longer have the noise of friends filling your schedule, you have the silence needed to hear your own heart and redirect it. And silence, when filled with Quran, dhikr, and dua, becomes one of the most powerful tools for personal healing. Philosophically, solitude is also a reminder that you were never meant to anchor your existence in people. People are temporary, and even the closest companions will eventually part ways. But the self you build in solitude, the faith, the resilience, the clarity, that becomes part of who you are forever. In fact, if you think carefully, some of the strongest individuals in life are those who learned how to stand alone with dignity, because they discovered that their strength comes not from a crowd but from conviction. But solitude is not just about inner growth. It can also be turned outward into service. Many people discover their greatest contributions to the world during seasons of loneliness. Instead of focusing on the absence of friends, they use that time to help others, to volunteer, to support their families, to give their energy to something bigger than themselves. And here's the beauty. In serving others, Allah often blesses you with new companionship. You begin to meet people who share your values, who walk the same path of sincerity. In this way, your loneliness becomes a doorway to new beginnings, to friendships rooted not in convenience but in purpose. The Prophet told us, the most beloved of people to Allah are those who are most beneficial to others. Tabarani, this is a clear reminder that if you feel unseen, go and serve. If you feel unloved, go and give love. If you feel friendless, be a friend to someone who has even less. That act alone will transform your loneliness into meaning, and meaning is what the soul craves more than company. So, if you find yourself in a stage of life where you are alone, do not waste it scrolling endlessly, waiting for someone to rescue you from boredom. Instead, seize it, open the Quran, pray with more focus. Set goals for yourself, serve others, because that stage of solitude, if used wisely, will shape you into someone who is not just waiting for companionship, but who becomes companionship for others, a source of light, strength, and hope. Loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the presence of purpose left unfulfilled. Fill it with Allah, fill it with growth, and fill it with service, and you will never truly be alone again.